All right, giving you something to talk about, or just a live TV as I like to call it. I'm your host, Melissa Krechler. Today we're going to be talking about healing your trauma and what it actually means to heal your trauma and how movements today can hinder that healing. So we're going to be getting into all of that. Our sponsor today is a Phoenix Identity. Want to learn how to truly heal your trauma? Want to change the way it impacts your life today? Join a Phoenix Identity, set up a clarity session, link in the description. And I just realized that I didn't link it in the description. So go and check out my website and go to a Phoenix Identity and find that today. All right. I'm going to hand it over to our guest speaker, Lois. Sorry. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. Hi, Melissa. Thank you so much for having me here today. I am in South Africa. I help people move from trauma, moving from victim to survivor, to thriver, and to freedom. And I do that by teaching them resilience, grit, a growth mindset, and forgiveness. And I always say, smile with Lois. I use that acronym to describe what I do. S is I'm a speaker and storyteller. M is a mentor. I, inspirer. L, a learning facilitator. And E, an empowering certified coach. So that's who I am.
I love it. Well, welcome. I'm glad you're here. And we're going to be talking about your story and my own story on how, when we don't heal trauma, it causes a lot of issues when we don't heal trauma. And one of the things that I mentioned in the description was, all the movements that may hinder your progress. There are a lot of things out there in society today that have become normal practices that do hinder your progress in healing your trauma. One of my own that I talk about is the positivity movement. While it is great and we all want to have a more positive life, one of the things that the positivity movement has created is an ignore or a push aside of any negative feelings or emotions or situations. And we don't process. When we ignore it or push it aside, we do not process what's happened, what we're feeling, what we're going through. And we've become emotional and mental robots at this point in a lot of ways. And that causes a lot of physical, mental, emotional, energetic repercussions when we're not dealing with that trauma. So, Lois, what do you think happens when people aren't healing their trauma?
Well, it just goes into your subconscious and it lives there. Post-traumatic stress syndrome appears. You get triggered when you hear or see things that you haven't processed. And once you've processed it, then you can actually move on. And so it's so important that you look at that. I always say what you need to do is you need to take the event that caused the trauma and divorce it from your feelings about the trauma. That is so important because you can't change what happened, but you can change how you feel about what happened. And if you don't change that, it does come back to bite you, and it bit me big time.
Yeah. And you're absolutely right. When we have, people are afraid, and for anybody watching or catching the replay, it is okay to be afraid that you're going to relive that trauma, but you're not actually going to relive it. You can't relive it. In situations like PTSD, absolutely, you can feel like you're reliving it, and mentally and emotionally, you are reliving it in that moment, right? You're reliving how it felt, what it looked like. But we can't go back and actually experience it again. And when we're talking about healing your trauma, I've noticed a lot of people who have expressed that fear of going back and accessing that trauma. I don't want to think about it again. I don't want to feel it again. I don't want to experience it again. Now, I agree with what Lois said, and I might come at it at a different approach or a similar approach, but what I do with my own clients is I take that and I say, listen, we're not going to go back and relive it. We're going to change how we look at it. We're going to change our perspective of it. When you don't heal that trauma, all of the emotions, all of the beliefs, all of the limitations, all of the fear that are attached to that trauma, you carry that forward. And then any little thing can trigger that trauma. So if you change the way you look at that trauma, right? It happened. You can't change that it happened. Just like Lois said, you cannot change that it happened. But going and saying, this made me stronger. This, I learned a lesson from this experience. If you change how you look at that trauma, then you can change the way it impacts you emotionally, mentally, physically today. And
Absolutely.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So in my case, what happened was I was brutally attacked. No one shouldn't say the R word on these things.
And I'm not. We don't censor too much on here.
And I was left for dead. And I became an activist. I really went out there and I said, I'm going to change the world. This shouldn't happen. And I really became, I led marches, I lobbied, I petitioned, wrote to ministers, I did all kinds of things. And I did that for a long time. And I felt so good about myself that I was fighting the good fight. In the meantime, I had not dealt with those emotions. I had just gone straight on to the next level without taking the first step. And as we both said, the first step is you've got to look at those emotions, those feelings, and you've got to deal with them at first. And what happened with me 2 years after my attack, I couldn't get out of bed one day. My back had just collapsed because what was happening, I was putting all my feelings, all my emotions, because I wasn't dealing with it, I wasn't facing it, and I was putting it all onto my back until my back just said, hello, I can't cope anymore. I can't hold you up anymore. And I collapsed. I had 2 failed back operations, bedridden for 6 months. And when somebody pointed out to me that it was all psychosomatic, there was nothing wrong with my back, I did some mental healing, some emotional healing. And the surgeon had told me that I would never hike or scuba dive again, which were my 2 passions at the time, because I could never put anything on my back again. And I had 8 chiropractic treatments, and I did a 5-day hiking trail with a 29-kilogram backpack on my back. Mm-hmm. And that is the power of healing. That is the power of dealing with those emotions or not dealing with those emotions.
Yeah. And it's so true. How many of us, and it's not just traumatic, and I'm going to say little trauma, big trauma, right? There are little traumas that we face every day that cause us to feel overwhelmed and stressed. And, today I was going to do a live today on one of my other podcasts and talk about how, when it feels like the universe is just piling everything on, right? The last week for me, I feel like everything has just been piled on. I've gotten a few pieces of correspondence and a few issues in the last week that require attention, that are, I can control and I am controlling. But again, it feels like when it rains, it pours, right? Everything kind of just goes on that dump all at the same time. And when you're not dealing with your emotions and the stress and the struggle and the traumas that you're experiencing, even the small ones, it starts to all pile on to the point where you do feel overwhelmed and you do feel stressed. And you look at the statue where the man is holding the world on his shoulders. That's what we've been taught. That's what we're supposed to do, is we're supposed to shoulder all the responsibility, shoulder all of our emotions, not talk about it. You look at men who are told that they're not allowed to be emotional. You look at women who are told, oh, you're just emotional because it's that time of the month or what have you. And nobody ever teaches us how to deal with our emotions, how to control them. And your emotions end up controlling you. When you don't heal trauma, your physical body experiences that trauma, your energetic body, your mental body, your emotional body, your spiritual body. Every part of you, who you are, is impacted by that trauma, by the emotions that continue to come up, by the beliefs that continue to come up until you experience what Lois experienced. And, you can't walk because your back gives out, or you experience burnout, or, just everything blows up all at once. And it's like, oh, I can't handle this. What am I supposed to do? But when you start to process, And when you do process, and I can't stress this enough, and I love that you shared this, Lois, is when you do process, there is so much power, so much release, so much healing that happens when you process those emotions, because they're not wearing you down. You can start to see other options. You can start to believe that I can. What is it? The little tugboat that goes, I can, right? And makes it up the hill because it believes in itself. And when we go through traumas, we stop believing in ourselves. We don't forgive ourselves for putting ourselves in that position in the first place, for whatever that looks like, right? And I'm not saying that we directly say, oh, I want to get attacked, or I want to get fired, or I want to do this, or we are in a space where we're making decisions, and those little itty bitty decisions put us in those situations.
That is so completely true. And you mentioned the word forgive. It's so important that you forgive yourself for those decisions. For me, I had to forgive myself, first of all, for working late the night when I was working. I then had to forgive myself for not knowing how to fight, because I fought this man furiously. But I didn't know how to fight. So afterwards, I had to forgive myself for not knowing how to fight. Then afterwards, I started drinking too much. I had to forgive myself for drinking too much. And then to forgive the other person. And, forgiveness is such a hot topic, and people have got such strong views about it. But forgiving the other person is not condoning what they did. It's not letting them off the hook. It's not saying you don't need to get punished for your crime or whatever it is that you did. But what it is, you're bonded to that person. You are carrying the pain and the agony and the angst and the fear, or whatever it is you're carrying. And by holding on to that unforgiveness, you are staying bonded to that person. And all the forgiveness does, it breaks that tie from you. It actually just releases you and lets you go free. And so forgiving the other person, it helps if you can just say, they didn't know any better. They did what they thought was okay. And had they known differently, they would have behaved differently. So forgiveness is a process. It's not always easy. I did it. I forgave the rapist. He was given a 25-year prison sentence, and I went to the prison and I forgave him. And it was the most releasing thing I've ever done. I didn't walk out of that prison. I literally flew out of that prison. And I've never been triggered since that day.
Yep. There's so much power in healing, so much power in it. And your life changes when you start to, and healing trauma. And one of the things that people don't realize is there's a lot of grief in trauma. And we've done episodes on grief, and I've talked about this specific topic before, is when we're kids, right? We're asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to be when you grow up? We create these huge, beautiful dreams when we're younger. I want to be a princess. I want to be a veterinarian. I want to be a doctor, a lawyer, an artist, or a princess, or whatever that looks like. And as we get older, those wants and those dreams, they change. Or maybe our circumstances change, or maybe things happen and we don't get to that point. And we get to an age where we don't follow that path, right? I wanted to be a veterinarian. There is no way that I could be a veterinarian because I am so medically squeamish. It's not even funny. I pass out. My whole body goes into shock. It's crazy. So I feasibly wouldn't have been able to be a veterinarian because I don't have I can't. I have limitations on that I've imposed on myself. But now it's like that I have to forgive myself for not following that path, because my inner child, my core identity says, I don't forget you making that. I don't forget that you decided that you were going to do that or that you wanted to do that. So I had a dream. I didn't fulfill that dream, and there's grief in that, right? So throughout our lifetime, as we're learning who we are, we hold on to these little itty bitty situations that are traumatic, where we don't follow through. We don't go down that path. We don't go down that road. And the forgiveness part of it is, it's okay that I didn't go that way. What I wanted changed, and that's okay. You think we're taught, oh, if you sign up for piano lessons, you have to stick with it. You can't drop out. You have to stick with it until the end, and you have to go as far as you can go. And that's what our parents teach us. And while it's a great lesson to stick with what you agree to do, right? Keep your word. If it's something that you don't like, and then we don't want to try new things, we don't want to go through new avenues, and we create a lot of internal hurt, traumatic feelings as we're getting older, because we're not following through. We're not following everybody else's guidance. We're not following what we want. And it gets to a point where we have to forgive ourselves and go, is this the way I wanted my life to look? If not, then that's okay.
That's so absolutely true, that we need to just understand who we are at all times. I remember I was walking down the street shortly after my experience, and this man whistled at me. And my first reaction was, how dare he? Because I was still full of, then I thought, he can. I'm an attractive woman, and he can whistle at me. So it's also looking at your mindset and just saying, I'm okay. I don't have to hate all men. I don't have to change my perception of other people because of what I've experienced from one person. And so it's looking at each incident in isolation and working with your feelings around those situations.
Yep. I love that you said that, because it isn't. Every person is an individual. Every person is uniquely individual. While we can have similar looks, look at identical twins. You can have a set of identical twins who are two completely different people. They process differently, they think differently, they act differently. While they might look the same, they're not the same people, right? DNA wise, yes. But every other way that matters, no, they're not. And we forget that every individual person is going to make decisions based on their needs. They're going to take action based on their beliefs. They're going to be accountable for their own, right? So your situation, the trauma that you experienced with the man that violated you, that was a unique experience with him and you, right? And while it happens quite frequently to other women in other situations, that was a one-time event. And looking at that as an isolated one-time event and healing that trauma from that event and not letting it sour you for everything else. We talk about relationship trauma. How many men and women will be in a long-term relationship? They give all of themselves, their love, their affection, their time. And at the end of it, they're traumatized because it didn't work. And then they go to start another one. And it's like, oh, no, red flag, you're going to cheat on me. Or I don't like men because he cheated on me, or he slept with my best friend, or all of the drama that you experienced, you carry into the next one.
Yeah, it's so important that you're talking about people are individuals. And as part of your healing journey as well is to know you are an individual, and what works for the first person may not work for you because you are different. You are unique in your own right. And so if the first healing that you go for, the first treatment, the first modality that you use doesn't work for you, it doesn't mean you won't heal. It just means that particular modality is not right for you, and just try something else, because there is a solution and everybody can move from that place of trauma. And there are hundreds of different ways and different treatments and modalities. So just find the one that works for you. It is your journey, and you are unique in your journey.
Yeah. That's why I love being an identity coach, because, you and I are people who know that. We understand that. We validate that. And, I'm assuming when you work with your clients, and when I work with my clients, your path is unique to yourself. So how you're going to come to that conclusion, how you're going to, walk down that path, your healing journey, that is going to be unique for you, right? If music is my happy place, maybe yours is dancing, maybe yours is artistry, maybe it's writing in a journal, whatever that looks like. We have to find those unique aspects to our own healing. And so what would you say is your first tip for when people are trying to heal their trauma?
The first thing I say is to just feel that feeling. So if it's a feeling of fear or shame or blame or hatred, or, whatever that feeling is, feel it, but don't stay with it for too long, because if you stay with it for too long, it becomes embedded in your subconscious and it becomes more difficult to move. So the first thing is to feel it. I always say rate it on a scale of 1 to 10. Feel it, describe it, feel it, smell it. Does it sound like nails scratching on a blackboard? Does it sound like a screeching animal? What does it smell like? Rotten eggs. What color is it? Black. Where do you feel it in your body? But 5 minutes, don't go too long. And then say, now, how do you want to feel? And then you change that approach. You say, well, I want to feel the sun shining on my face, and I want to hear birds singing and children laughing, and I want to smell roses or hot coffee or whatever it is. And start changing the feeling into a positive feeling. That's just one of the immediate tips, but there are so many. There's a lot of somatic, physical things one can do when you're having that negative feeling by using your hands, mindfulness, just changing your mindset, get away from that negative thought, move it to a positive thought. Writing is fantastic. Talking is fantastic. You don't have to talk to a therapist. You can talk to your mirror if you need to, or to your dog or your cat. But I believe that when you talk, you are sharing your pain, you're sharing your agony with the universe, and the universe is taking some of that pain away from you. So by just expressing yourself, it also clarifies in your mind what's going on. It helps you understand how you're feeling and why you're feeling like you're feeling. So writing, speaking, using all of these mindfulness techniques, find your happy place. As you said, whether it's dancing or music, whatever it is, find that happy place. Get into nature, but do it as soon as possible after the event.
Mm-hmm. That's actually step 4 of my Rockstar method. And for anybody wondering, I did pin in the comments, I shared the Facebook group for the Rockstar method. We're going to do trainings in there. And that's part of the sponsorship for today. So I wanted to throw that in there really quickly. The Rockstar method, I'm going to tell you the first 4 steps of the Rockstar method, because you've already touched on one, and that's recognize. We always want to recognize how we feel. The purpose is to feel your emotions, recognize them, but learn how to control them instead of having them control you. And that's what that's one of the biggest things that people are missing, is when we start to feel an emotion, we start to allow it to control us. And then we get caught up in that feeling, and we don't know how to remove ourselves from that feeling, or even just release that feeling so that we can process and move forward. So for me, the Rockstar method is step 1, and it is recognize, own, claim, and kneel. That's the first part of the Rockstar. As you can tell, I absolutely love acronyms. As Just Alive, giving you something to talk about. It's Just Alive TV. I love acronyms, and all of my methods have acronyms. So, but the Rockstar method, that's what it is. It's recognize, own, claim, and kneel. And when you do that, then you have the ability to start to process. I taught my husband the Rockstar method a few weeks ago, and we were watching the Mario movie, and I said this on an episode the other day, but we were watching the Mario movie as a family this past weekend, and he started to get really overwhelmed and very overly sensitized to all of the noises going on around him. And my husband's very much if we're watching a movie, he likes it quiet, he likes to focus, that's it. And a lot of stuff was going on around us, so he was having a really hard time with that. And so he said, he paused it. He said, okay, I need to walk away for a minute. And he went and walked away. And when he walked away, he did the recognize, own, claim, and kneel. And he did all of that. And he came back and he told me after. And I'm like, you did it? You really, like, 15 years and you did it? Like, I was so excited because he had actually done the Rockstar method, but he made it his own. He didn't, and I think that's the point of what Lois and I are talking about, individuality. He made it his own. And that's for any good coach, that's our purpose. We want you to take what we're teaching you, make it your own, and then not need us anymore. Right? I don't want my clients 6 months to a year and you're done. Like, I don't want, if we don't need each other no more. Like, you're good to go. But you have those tools. And when you recognize your emotions, you understand them, right? If you look at a child who's having a temper tantrum, right? Or a dog that's not behaving. And I know, horrible, I just compared the two, but bear with me. They want recognition. They want you to recognize that they're feeling a certain way, right? And that's part of it. You need to recognize that these feelings, these emotions, they're there for a reason. Your negative emotions, your trauma, it's there to show you that it's time to grow. It's time to change the way you think, the way you feel, the way you act. It's time to grow. And trauma usually encourages that growth. Every traumatic event that I have ever experienced has opened the door for something new and something exciting for me. Every single one of them. And it works.
It's so true. And that's why I call it a benefit mindset. You get a growth mindset when you're learning from what you've experienced. But a growth mindset is now, what am I going to do with this? How can I help other people grow and develop? And so it becomes a benefit mindset where you're actually giving back and you're helping others. So not everybody like you and I get to that benefit stage. You might get to the growth mindset stage, but not necessarily the benefit mindsets. And that's fun. Again, we're individuals. We all have different journeys, different paths that we have to follow. But yeah, that's the benefit mindset is my step just before the final step. And the final step is that total forgiveness, to find that freedom and that peace.
Yeah, absolutely. Life is a lot different when you know how you're going to process and heal your trauma. And every day becomes less stressful, less traumatic, less, the little things don't bug you as much. When you're in a traumatic state, and those emotions are controlling you and those triggers are controlling you, everything becomes the trigger. You get very angry, very hostile, very defensive and combative. Your relationship struggle, your business, your career struggles, because you don't want to put the effort and you don't want to put the time, or maybe, you become a victim mentality where everybody is against you or everybody's out to get you. And I've seen it happen across the board. I've seen all of the different, outcomes of that. And I can't stress it enough. When you heal your trauma, you open up doors that you never thought were possible.
But as you said, that it stops the triggers as well. I was attacked from behind. And so if somebody just walked behind me and I didn't see them, I would get such a fright. But after I healed, you can go right up behind me and go boo. And I'm absolutely fine with it. So you can healing is possible. So many people feel that it's not possible, and it's possible sooner rather than later. You don't have to hang on to it for years and years and years. Seek the help and get healing as soon as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we get going, Lois?
No, not really. Just to take especially the forgiveness part. I sometimes call myself, Lois, your friend for forgiveness, because I really believe that forgiveness is such an important step in life for anything, not only for trauma. I always say everyone keeps gratitude journals these days, 3 things you're grateful for. I always say forgive yourself for 3 things every day. Little things, for burning the toast, for shouting at the dog, for pushing the snooze button on the alarm. Little things, because then forgiveness is like a muscle and it's a habit. So you can learn to forgive and then forgive other people. Forgive your friend for forgetting your birthday, forgive the husband for not bringing the milk home, forgive the dog for chewing your slipper. Again, it's just building that muscle, and it becomes such a part of who you are that forgiveness, when it comes to the big things, is that much easier.
Absolutely.
So, and then in final, I always like to say to people, heal, forgive, and fly free.
Mm-hmm. I love it. All right. Well, for anybody catching the episode live or watching the replay, go and check out Lois's information. You can find her stuff in the description of this episode. Go and check her out, see what she does. If you resonate with her, go and hear more about her story, and all of her, escapades that she's been on. So go and check out Lois, links in the description. As always, Phoenix Identity, go and check out the Rockstar Method. Join the Facebook group today. We are going to be doing little trainings every week on how to control your emotions, that's the purpose of the Rockstar Method. It is becoming the rock star of your own life by learning how to control your emotions, and you learn how to control everything else. So go and check that out. I'm your host, Melissa Krechler. You can find all of my information at the bottom of this episode description, melissakretchler.com, where you'll find all 6 of my businesses, 7 technically. So go and check that out. And Lois, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciated your time.
Thank you. You're a rock star.
Why, thank you. For anybody watching, if you're interested in being a guest speaker, blogger, sponsor, or if you would like to see a topic featured on the show, please join us at gystalivetv.com or reach out to us across social media. You can find us by clicking Just Alive TV or giving you something to talk about. I look forward to speaking to you soon. And for all of you, have a wonderful afternoon, morning, or evening, depending on when you're watching. And I will talk to you next time.